And now I have the honor to introduce former Montgomery County, Maryland council member and now Secretary of the U.S. Department of Labor, the Honorable Thomas Perez. Since taking office in July 2013, Secretary Perez has committed to making good on the promise of opportunity for all, giving every working family a chance to get ahead, and putting a middle-class life within reach of everyone willing to work for it. To accomplish this, Perez's priorities for the department include ensuring a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, connecting ready-to-work Americans with ready-to-be-filled jobs through skills programs like registered apprenticeship and on-the-job training, promoting gender equality in the workplace, ensuring that people with disabilities and veterans have access to equal employment opportunity, and insisting on a safe and level playing field for all American workers. Please welcome to the stage the Honorable Thomas Perez.
Good morning. It's great to be back among friends. Once a local elected official, always a local elected official. I have the fondest memories of the privilege of serving on the Montgomery County Council from 2002 to 2006, and the things that we were able to get done. And as we sit here in Washington, where life is a little more challenging in terms of bringing both sides together, I often wax nostalgic for my days in local government and state government because, the honest reality is, the rubber hits the road at local government levels. And you really can't afford to be ideological when you're sitting in your perch. You got to get things done. People expect that. You want to move the ball forward, and you do with great, great success. So I have a lot of very, very fond memories, and I really, in this job, have been remarkably informed by my experiences as a local elected official and in state government as the labor secretary. And I've tried to bring that perspective to the role of labor secretary. And what I really want to talk about today are things that I think you heard from the vice president yesterday. And it's all about partnership and innovation, because when I think about the work that you do, and I think about the work that we do, and I think about our joint work as a nation and what we have to do as a nation, I think about partnership and innovation. And as the vice president said yesterday, you look at where we are now, and it's remarkable the opportunities that exist. In the 3 months before the president took office, we lost 2 million jobs. Now you look at the last 59 months, we've had 59 consecutive months of private sector job growth to the tune of 11.8 million jobs. We haven't had 59 consecutive months of job growth. That's the longest streak on record, and I think we've been keeping records since something like 1940. So you think about where we were in the depths of the recession. There were 7.5 job seekers for every job. Now we are under 2, something like 1.7 job seekers for every job. You look at auto sales now. Last month, the best year since something like 2007. You look at so many other indicators of success. If you're working at an auto plant or on an assembly line anywhere, you're working an average of 42 hours a week. So we see so many different signs of success. And it really now, as we think about the unfinished business, really the question is, and the challenge before all of us together, is the challenge of how do we take this tailwind and make sure that it results in shared prosperity? Because last year was the best year of job growth since the late 90s. The difference between the late 90s and today is that the job growth that we saw in the late 90s and the economic growth that we saw in the late 90s resulted in shared prosperity. It was much greater prosperity. Here, what we're seeing is that notwithstanding this progress, we continue to have a number of folks who are still looking for work. We continue to have, we're seeing movement in wages, but too many people haven't had a meaningful increase in their wages in years. And as a result of that, we've got some unfinished business. And the unfinished business is really building a society and a community of shared prosperity, a nation of shared prosperity. That is the unfinished business, and we can do so much together. I reflect on just what I was up to last week. I was directed by the president to head out west last week because the West Coast ports were having a labor dispute, and they'd made a lot of progress, but they were at impasse on a critical issue. And the key to being able to bring that home, and the president dispatched me with the basic direction to figure out a way to bring both sides together and resolve it. And late Friday night, we were able to do that. And I bring this up because a key to our success last week was my conversations every day with local elected officials, because you all know what's going on in your communities. And that sort of partnership was indispensable. And the president said to me, you know, what was the key to success? And I said, well, one of the keys to success were so many local elected officials who had insights and relationships with key parties. And so as we think about the challenges that lie ahead, whether it's the ports dispute or building shared prosperity, there is so much we can do together. And the first area of partnership I want to talk to you about is really the area of workforce development, because you are front and center in the workforce development front, and a number of my colleagues addressed you during the course of your conference. Portia Wu, who is the head of our Employment and Training Administration, and Jerry Fiala had an opportunity to talk to you. I remember vividly the opportunities that we had when I was in the Montgomery County Council. And workforce development is a joint venture between the federal, state, and local governments, between our business leaders, between our community colleges, which in my mind are the secret sauce of success across communities. And we need to continue these partnerships. I often refer to the Department of Labor as Match.com, because what we do for a living is we match job seekers who want to punch their ticket to the middle class with business owners who want to grow. And what's remarkable right now is, in my world of being able to have this privilege of seeing the whole country, I have the same conversation with employers everywhere I go. And it goes like this: Tom, I am bullish about our future. I want to grow my business. And one of my biggest challenges is I need to make sure that I have the skilled workforce to compete. I was in central New York a few months back, an advanced manufacturer. They have a global footprint, but their epicenter is right outside of Syracuse. And they had business that they were actually filling at their location in the UK because they simply didn't have enough skilled workers at their facility in central New York to fill these orders. And that's a shame on us moment. You know, we've got to work to fill that pipeline. And opportunities abound with the reauthorization of the Workforce Investment Act. And what I see across the country as a result of our investments in community colleges, over the last 4 years, we've given out $2 billion in what we call TACT grants. We fired our acronym director because TACT is really, it's one of the worst acronyms, but what it stands for is building partnerships with you all, with community colleges, with businesses and others, to make sure that we have access to in-demand jobs. Because principle number one, as you know, of effective workforce development is we must be demand-driven. You know, the days of train and pray are over. You don't train widget makers if nobody's hiring widget makers. And all too frequently, the old paradigm was we weren't demand-driven to a sufficient extent. And so that's principle number one. Principle number two is we want to make sure that we take the job seeker where we find him or her. There are so many people who are looking for work right now. And there are so many jobs out there right now. There are 5 million open jobs in America as I stand up here to speak with you. That is another bellwether of an economy that is moving forward. And what we need to make sure is that we match the jobs that are open now and the jobs that will be open in the future with the skills that are necessary to do those jobs. And that is what the reauthorized Workforce Investment Act is doing, making sure that we implode stovepipes. And I was having a conversation just a few minutes ago with some of you in the back, and I was talking about my experiences in local and state government. And when I became the labor secretary in Maryland, I said to the governor, we need to revamp how we deliver workforce services, and give me a few months to kick the tires and figure out, what's right and what's wrong about our system in Maryland. And what was wrong about our system was it was way too stovepiped, because we had all these different agencies that had skin in the game, but we didn't really communicate with each other. And people don't have housing problems or employment problems or health problems. They have challenges that are multifaceted. And I asked the folks, like, why are we so stovepiped in state government? And they said, well, that's what the feds do. And I said, well, I said, that's not a very good reason. So let's mimic a system that doesn't work. And so one of the privileges of my job right now is the opportunity to implode those stovepipes. And that's exactly what we're doing. And that's exactly what I encourage you to do as well. Because, for instance, we're working with the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services on career pathways initiatives that take people who are on TANF or food stamps and give them not simply a job, but a career pathway in an in-demand area. Because again, principle number one is we have to be demand-driven. Principle number two, you take the job seeker where you find them. Principle number three is every person in our community is gifted and talented, and it's up to us to draw out those gifts and talents, to play the role of Match.com and to bring them together. And that's exactly what I'm observing in communities across this country. And the Workforce Investment, Innovation, and Opportunity Act is doing just that. It's really a stovepipe implosion initiative, so that we are doing unified plans. And that simply means let's get everybody talking. Because if you're a 23-year-old veteran, you just got honorably discharged, you have a disability, you're living with your parent in subsidized housing, and you get food stamps and TANF, and you want a job, and you go to one of your American Job Centers, well, I have just implicated 6 or 7 federal agencies, all of whom have job training dollars. Well, let's bring them together. And that's exactly what we're doing. Let's bring them together and pool our dollars, work synergistically, and that's why I travel now with Tom Vilsack with regularity, because we're trying to take food stamp recipients and not simply connect them to a minimum wage job, but connect them to the American Job Centers so that they can get access to a career pathway. And the best way to reduce the ranks of food stamp recipients is to give people access to a good job. And that's what exactly what you have the ability to do. That is what the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is catalyzing. That's what the Vice President talked to you about yesterday, because he led the effort along with his wife to make sure we did a soup to nuts review at a federal government level of how we deliver workforce services. And now, as a result, among other things, we have a skills cabinet that I have the privilege of chairing. We are working together synergistically with our agencies. We're encouraging that sort of innovation at a state and a local level, and I encourage you to do that as well, because that sort of partnership, that sort of innovation is how I think we can move forward and make sure that this tailwind that we see in the economy is a sustained tailwind, that we can give people access to that skills infrastructure so that we can actually move forward and give people and play that Match.com role. And one area in which I hope the Vice President talked about yesterday, where you have tremendous opportunity, is in the world of apprenticeship. You know, I was in Germany recently and the UK, and it's remarkable. If you look at the youth unemployment rate in Germany, it is not a coincidence that the youth unemployment rate in Germany is less than half of what it is here in the United States. Because the apprenticeship model in Germany, when you are a 16-year-old individual and you're at that fork in the road, do I go to 4-year higher ed or do I take the apprenticeship route? Each one of those pathways enjoys stature. But here in the United States, over the last 2 or 3 decades, and this is not a partisan observation, but we have devalued apprenticeship. And we've done that to our detriment. And as a result of that, we have employers that I see all the time who are confronting the graying of their population, who are saying, where am I going to get my pipeline? And that is why we are investing in apprenticeship, and we need to lift up apprenticeship. The president has challenged us to double the number of registered apprentices over the next 5 years. We're working with businesses across sectors. When you think of apprenticeship, you think of the skilled trades, and that's a good area to think about. But apprenticeship doesn't simply have application in the skilled trades. It has application in IT, in cybersecurity, in logistics, in healthcare. And that is what we are doing with our $100 million competitive grant opportunity. If you don't know about it, get online at dol.gov, because $100 million is on the street now. April 30th is the due date. And what we're trying to do is catalyze partnership and innovation in apprenticeship, and to make sure that it is accessible not only in the traditional skilled trades, but in these other areas. And remember, I always refer to apprenticeship as the other college, except without the debt. Because there are so many people out there who learn differently. Some people get on that linear 4-year path. Other people learn by doing. And the thing about it, when I talk to parents who say to me, you know, Tom, I don't want an apprenticeship. My kid's going to college. And I explain to them that when you come out of an apprenticeship program, you get a credential, and then you stack it on top of another credential. And we now have community colleges across the country that are accepting these credentials, so that when you complete the apprenticeship, you're 2/3 of the way to your associate's degree. And as a result, you are on that higher ed superhighway. So it's not either apprenticeship or a 4-year college degree. It is the opportunity to do both and then some. And so we need your help as we revamp this skills superhighway to make sure that you are in the epicenter, as local governments have been throughout, of this skills transformation. That's what is so exciting about my work right now. There is an undeniable transformation of how we are working with state and local governments, with businesses, with colleges and other educators, community colleges, with nonprofits, faith leaders. This is what I call the Eisenhower moment. You know, Dwight Eisenhower brought us the interstate highway, and that transformation has changed America forever. We're in the midst right now of building the skills superhighway, and the skills superhighway has on-ramps and off-ramps. It recognizes that some people already have a college degree and they need to brush up. Other people may have a disability, and we need to build that on-ramp for them, so that we don't simply focus on the first 3 letters of that word, but we focus on the last 7 letters. Other people may be coming out of a correctional facility, and we recognize that we are a nation of second chances. And so right now, we have a grant on the street, and we're trying to replicate something that we actually did in Montgomery County. We put a one-stop center behind the fence in the Montgomery County Jail. And you know what? I can show you the return on investment of that in abundance, because we are able to get people trained in in-demand jobs, and we are able to build a county jail that is safer. And if Warden Green were here with you, he would tell you that this has been one of the biggest innovations that he has done, because he took some of the most incorrigible inmates and he channeled them into positive directions of getting access to skills. So he made his jail safer, he made his population smarter, and he helped to enable people to get the skills they needed to compete. The largest public employer in the state of Maryland, private employer in the state of Maryland, is Hopkins Hospital. The most prolific employer of former offenders is Hopkins. a pretty good institution. And if Ron Peterson, the head of Hopkins Hospital, were here, he would tell you that, you know what, this is not an act of charity. It's an act of enlightened self-interest. And it's an act of enlightened self-interest because we are employing not simply entry-level folks, but that's important, but we're employing allied health professionals, phlebotomists, x-ray techs. We're creating career pathways. And the folks that we're hiring who had a criminal history are some of our most effective employees. And so once again, partnership and innovation. Local government is where I learned this, and now I have the privilege of taking it to scale at the federal level. And I urge you to take a look at it, because the best way to reduce recidivism is to make sure that people coming out of jail have the skills to compete and access to in-demand jobs. If we want to make sure we continue this tailwind, we need to redouble our efforts on apprenticeship. And you are well positioned to do that in local government. So many employers are signing up. So many partners are on board. So many opportunities abound. And you have so many young people who want these opportunities. And it was so exciting a few weeks ago when I was down in North Carolina to talk to employers and to talk to apprentices who are punching their ticket to the middle class in advanced manufacturing, in IT, in other professions. And so you have those opportunities in the skills space to innovate, to partner, and to take the opportunities that are presented by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act and take them to scale. Because what we're doing is going to happen on a regional basis. There's no cookie cutter approach to how we build the skills of America. Your demands in Charlotte-Mecklenburg are going to be different than the demands in Montgomery County. But those principles I outlined are principles of universal application, partnership, demand-driven, taking the job seeker as we find them, recognizing there is no such thing as a spare American. When we do that, we do things successfully. There's so much more innovation that you have been doing in local government. And that's what I loved about working on the Montgomery County Council, is we did things. And I hope that you continue to do things. We have worked with state and local governments across the country to increase the minimum wage. And you continue to do that. 7 million people got a raise as a result of actions of state and local governments in this past year. And that is remarkably important. We've done a lot of work in the area of paid leave. And you know, in my international travels, the issue of paid leave is one of the most interesting things, because there's a tendency when someone talks about paid leave in the United States to think, oh, this is just sort of a platform of the Democratic Party. Well, when you look at this internationally, and I have spoken to government leaders in Australia, in the UK, in Germany, in Canada, and you look at this issue, people across the ideological spectrum embrace this as part of the DNA of their economy. And why do they do this? Because you look at Canada, for instance. The female labor force participation in the year 2000 of Canada and the US was identical. And now, you look 15 years later, their female labor force participation is like something like 7.5% higher than the United States. That translates into, quite literally, if we had kept pace with Canada, we would have something like 6 million more women in the workplace. And why is that? Because they have invested in paid leave. They have invested in childcare. They recognize that we live in a modern family universe, but we shouldn't have leave it a beaver rules. And they understand that. And Germany understands that. Australia, a conservative ruling government, their platform for election was expanding paid leave. So this is not, in the global context, a progressive issue or a conservative issue. In the global context, this is an issue of enlightened economic self-interest. You know, we work best when we field a full team. But we are leaving women on the sidelines, and local governments and state governments have been at the forefront of this innovation. And so I encourage you to keep thinking about these things, because as I have had the privilege of traveling the world on this particular issue, We are the only advanced nation on the planet that isn't doing this. And as a result, you got folks in the Silicon Valley, they got a gender issue, if you haven't read the paper, including 2 days ago, a trial involving a harassment case in a Silicon Valley company. So we've got to keep moving on this. And the reason I'm excited to speak to you is that you are incubators of innovation. I think about all the things that local and state governments have been doing in these areas that help lift wages, that help expand opportunity. You have the tools at your disposal in so many communities, and you have been using them. And we will continue to work with you because you are doing so much important work. And we need your help. And that's really what I want to leave you with, because this skills transformation, the thing I love about it is that it's nonpartisan. The Workforce Investment Act reauthorization, that was passed overwhelmingly. But we need to take the next step. We had 4 rounds of tax funding, $2 billion. We don't currently have a round 5. We have remarkable opportunities to sustain and continue the momentum. These are investments that we're making. And if we want to run government like a business, well, you know what? Businesses invest in their human capital. And as a nation, we are woefully behind other industrialized nations in our investment in a public workforce system. And that is why I need your help, because there's this Eisenhower moment right now. And we need to continue our work on a bipartisan fashion to make sure Congress understands that we have the wind at our back economically. We have a remarkable set of opportunities to upskill America, to build this skills superhighway, to build those on-ramps and off-ramps that create portable, stackable credentials that enable people to work and not only have the skills to compete for today's jobs, but to have the ability to adjust to the changing environments. That's what I learned in Buffalo, New York. I grew up in Buffalo, a wonderful town, and I'm proud of it. And the challenge that my surrogate father had, I was a kid when my dad died, and my surrogate father had a 10th grade education. And he was the wisest man I ever met. I often felt that there was an inverse correlation between the number of years you go to school and your wisdom. And he was my proof perfect of that. And the challenge that he had was that when he lost his job, he did not have the training to compete for the next generation of jobs. And as a result, they lost their house. He lost his dignity. He went from one job to another. I don't want to see that happen. We can avoid that. We have an opportunity now. And so we need your help. And that's why I've spoken to mayors. That's why we met with bipartisan groups of governors over the last 2 days, because this is a remarkable moment. The reason why we have a tailwind, one reason is because we've got a remarkable workforce, but we've got to continue those investments. And so if there's one and only one thing that you take away from my remarks about innovation and partnership, it's that I need your help in building a movement. I need your help in persuading Congress that we have a chance of a lifetime right now to construct the skills ecosystem, to construct that skills superhighway. And the on-ramps are coming, the off-ramps are coming, the apprenticeship on-ramps, the on-ramps for veterans, the on-ramps for people who have a disability, the on-ramps for people with a criminal record, and off-ramps. We can do this with your help. But you know what? It doesn't happen on its own. You know that because you get lobbied a lot. And I need your help so that we can indeed build this movement, because there's so much progress, and I've been in so many of your communities, and I know the great work that you do, and I know that we can't do it without you. So let's continue to work together so that we can indeed build an America where middle-class economics is the order of the day, where everyone who works hard and plays by the rules has the ability to punch their ticket to the middle class. That's why you all got into elective office. That's why I got in it, and let's do it together. So thanks for having me, and I hope you had a great conference, and I hope you will continue to help us build this movement of shared prosperity. Thank you very much.